we built in this component of expectations that is so important, like that it's both. But then when you start looking at that aspect of it, if you have incredibly high standards and you're not helping them believe they're capable, you're not letting them know that they achieve, then I mean, the research is definitive. Like that creates burnout and it creates
Yeah.
cynicism. And you can drive people for a while with your high standards, but it's transactional and it will be temporal as well.
Welcome to Science of Leadership, the podcast dedicated to helping you become a better leader. Here, you'll gain valuable knowledge, hear inspiring stories, and learn the scientific principles that promote exceptional leadership. I've been really looking forward to today's episode. We're going to be diving into a topic that has deep personal meaning to me and something I believe is one of the most important traits of great leaders. They focus on building others. To do so, I'm delighted to have Doug Crandall joining me. Doug is a graduate from and former instructor at the United States Military Academy at West Point and co-author of several books, including editing this book, Leadership Lessons from West Point. He revitalized West Point's leadership development programs and thereafter spent 7 years creating and teaching Walmart's premier leadership program. Doug has spent his career not just studying leadership, but living it, helping cadets, executives, and emerging leaders understand how to bring out the best in the people they serve. Doug, it's an honor to have you on the Science of Leadership. Welcome.
Tom, it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, Doug, when we spoke before, you brought up this idea that we really resonated on. That is that great leaders focus on building people. Let's start there. What does it mean to be a leader who builds others?
For some reason, I've been thinking about this a lot over the last 12 to 18 months. I can't even really pinpoint like why it's become so central for me, but kind of my theory would be that in everything we say, I mean, as leaders, we have power. We can use that for good or bad, but we just kind of naturally have it. With everything you say, I don't even really think there's a neutral. You're sort of building people up or you're diminishing them. We make them feel bigger or smaller. That power just kind of creates that. It's really hard to walk that razor's edge of neutral. And so given that sort of dichotomy, it's just a topic I've been thinking about a lot. And I think building simply, you're making people, we've defined it as feel more capable, more confident, or more valued, making them feel bigger or smaller.
Capable, competent, and valued. This really is getting at something that is fundamental to who I am. Really, I would say at the center of what I would consider to be my purpose. In fact, I often tell people that I believe I was put on this earth to build up others, to
Hmm.
help them do great things, maybe great things they didn't even believe that they could do. So this idea of being able to build people, to be a people builder, is really is at my is my core. As you think about leaders who build others, do you have one or maybe a couple great stories, examples that what that really looks like when people build others?
Yeah, it might be a story that maybe wouldn't seem typical as you get into this topic, but it's one that's kind of encapsulated for me, and really a memory that came back to me as I started thinking about this. And when I first applied to teach at West Point, we actually drove our family up. We were stationed in South Carolina, and we drove up from South Carolina in our Honda Accord with my wife and two kids, so I could do a couple interviews. And I remember I did one interview in the morning with one academic department. So there's 13 academic departments at West Point. You could teach chemistry, you could teach physics. I was kind of on the softer side, interviewing with some departments. And in the first interview, I sat down with a lieutenant colonel. And at the time, he seemed old, but he was probably in his early 40s or something. I was dressed up one of the first times in my Army career in my full green uniform with a tie on. You don't wear that often. And he pointed to a list of people. I mean, I had a pretty good record. I certainly wasn't cocky. I was nervous. I was hoping I could kind of live out this dream of teaching at West Point. And he pointed to a list of people. I remember him doing this, and he said, "Hey, something like there's, you got a good record, but we got 56 people just like you. Like you're not special." And I don't know whether he interpreted that was a message I needed to hear or what, or he did this to test me. I really don't know. It wasn't that big a deal, but I felt a little bit smaller, right? And
Mm.
then he kind of went through some of my performance evaluations, and he looked at the verbiage, and he's like, "Oh, like, this looks good, but they probably say this about everybody." And I kind of chuckled, like, am I supposed to laugh at this joke? And I don't really remember, Tom, exactly how I felt when I walked out there. I didn't feel horrible. Like,
Mhm.
it was just odd, but I felt a little bit smaller, right? And
Yeah.
after lunch, and this is where it came, this is why it's such a stark memory to me. After lunch, I go to another department to interview. And in this case, I'll use the name. I was with actually the department head at this point, a gentleman named Colonel Casey Brower. He's retired General Casey Brower now. And this isn't about me. It's about Casey Brower. But he looks at me, and just at some point, I just remember him saying, "You're awesome." And he said, "You're the kind of person we want role model in teaching cadets." And he got me up and he walked me to like down the hall, up and down the hallway to three different offices and said, "Hey, I want you to meet Doug Crandall. He's the kind of guy we want teaching here." I don't know how many people General Brower did this for. I mean, I'm certainly it was others, but the contrast in experience was kind of unbelievable for me. It just was. how someone was making me feel, and whether that was intentional or not. In the first case, it was certainly intentional on General Brower's uh, case. And I just follow up with one story because I ended up
Sure.
going to teach in Colonel Brower's department, the Department of Behavioral Sciences Leadership at West Point. He had actually moved on by the time I got there several years later, but he was a big part of why I went there. But after they picked me to teach, maybe 6 months later, I had sent an email back to Colonel Brower, like thanking him for the opportunity. And within that email, this unfortunately, after I'd hit send, I noticed that I said something to the effect of like, I can't wait to get there. And I spelled it Their, but I didn't notice the spelling mistake until after, like, as I said, I'd hit send. And like my stomach sort of sank, and it was just a little thing, but I felt stupid. I'm writing this,
Sure.
my future boss and senior rater, and spelling this word wrong in like one of my first interactions. And then it gets worse, Tom, because a few minutes later, Colonel Brower forwards that email to the whole
Oh no.
department. So my future colleagues, like everyone's going to see. There was only a few sentences. The word was glaring. Like I felt like it was screaming at me from the screen. Like I can't wait to get there. But in a forwarded email, as I read down, before he sent it, Colonel Brower had changed it to There. He's changed it. He edited it for me, sent it out, and he didn't. I mean, Tom, what's amazing to me, it's such a little story, but I remember it. It built trust because he didn't write me back and say, "Hey, Crandall, like I picked you. You need to learn how to spell." He just didn't. He didn't do any of that. He just fixed it. And I wrote him and I said, "Hey, this was my chance also to let him know I knew how to spell." But I was like, "Hey, I noticed you fixed my spelling. Thank you, sir." And he just wrote back, "It'll be our little secret." This is a guy with 30 years in the army who has immense power in my life at that point. And he's gonna it
Mhm.
just didn't beat me down. There was just something about that that built me up. It made me feel valued. Tom, I actually shared this story on LinkedIn, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and I got all kinds of private responses from some people that that you're connected to on LinkedIn that you don't even really know
Mhm.
about the impact that Casey Brower had in their lives. And so you think, well, that's just one story about him fixing your spelling. Does this really show he's a builder? But it's in the way he thought, those little actions, the way he wanted to make me feel. We'll get to this later, I'm sure. It's not just about making people feel good. Like he had high standards and he ran a great
Mhm.
department and he held people accountable. But in the end, how he wanted to make you feel was more confident, more capable, more valued. It's probably the best story that I have personally. But it's not some grand story, but I think that
Yeah.
matters. I mean, because it's in these little things we do and what we do in the little moments every day, how we think in terms of whether we build or diminish others.
Doug, that's a great story. I think that it highlights so many things. I mean, it paints this picture of Colonel Brower being a multiplier, in a sense, because as you mentioned, it was across LinkedIn. There were so many people, and
Yeah,
and the impact that can have, just in the little things, right? I mean, because it's the little things that make the big things.
for sure. I mean, another story I told recently was I've been doing a lot of running. I haven't been a lifelong runner. I'm not like a world class runner, but I've been trying to get better. And several months ago, I was out doing a little just hill workout, a very mediocre way at 50 plus years old. Now I was running up this little hill, and it's right down here. I can picture it's right over here. And as I was running up this hill, a woman was walking down, and she just said, "Good job." I mean, Tom, I'm 50 plus years old. I got degrees from this college and they went to West Point and all this stuff. And I'm running up this hill and this stranger who I didn't know and I haven't seen since just says good job. And it made me feel better. I mean, I'm willing to admit that, right? Like, I mean, I think we all need to be built up and maybe some of us don't, but I think the universal human experience is kind of, we need people. And in that instance, I was working pretty hard and didn't feel phony on her part. I mean, I was sweating and I was chugging and I was trying to get in better shape. And she just said, good job. And so I think if some stranger can have an impact on you when you're out there doing some mediocre running, like the power that leaders have then in the lives of others is just immense.
As you were talking about Colonel Brower, I was reminded of one that Admiral Jim Loy, who was the commandant of the Coast Guard, shared about his early career, and that was on a recent one of our podcast episodes, and so folks can check that out because it's a tremendous story. But same kind of thing. And then as you're talking about this person while you're out there running, I'm reminded of when I was out with my friend Rich, and we were biking, and this was out in California in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and there was this park that we would ride through. Sometimes we'd come up off of Highway 1 on the coast, and we would cut up and go up the mountain through this park, and it was an old sort of logging fire road trail, and they don't make those things to be convenient to people riding bikes on them, okay? And so they look for about as direct a path as you can go up the side of this mountain. So they're steep and they're rooty and they're technical a lot of times at the very wrong place that they need to be when you're trying to stay upright on a bike. And it's, I don't know how many miles of climb it is, but it's pretty significant. So Rich and I are out there and we're going up this mountain, and we're probably a third of the way through riding up this thing, And the goal was always don't Don't come out of the pedals. Don't come off the seat. Just stay on the bike. Don't walk. We're not trying to walk this thing, you know? And about a third of the way up, there was this group of people just kind of lumbering down the trail. And this woman said, "You got a long way to go." and, and it's like, what kind of person does that? Right? Like who does that? You're out doing this really hard thing and you got an opportunity, just like you said, to build somebody up or to tear them down or to keep your mouth shut. Even that,
Yeah,
like the third
yeah,
option, right? The razor's edge.
totally.
Keep your mouth shut. And this person decided to do that. Now, I'm the kind of person that was like, watch me. You know,
Mm,
so
mhm.
so I kept turning the pedals, right? And I ended up writing a little piece called "Keep Turning the Pedals" about how we overcome hard things. You know, even when people are negative or things like that. But your story about run up the hill and somebody saying, "Hey, good job," like the difference that can make in
Yeah.
somebody's life. And you, as leaders, just as you're conveying, our impact can be so far reaching. We don't have any idea that happened. And so speaking something positive in somebody's life, it doesn't cost us anything.
Tom, I love the contrast because as I'm exploring this topic and reading the science of it and thinking about writing about it, I want to focus on the positive. But the truth is, there's almost this sense of like if we could just get leaders to do no harm, we'd be better off. And there's so much diminishment in the world, and it is interesting, like what makes somebody say that. My wife and I, our youngest son, has been searching for a job, and it's tough when you're a general business marketing major. It's tough right now anywhere. But it's just a tough
Sure,
period of life, and I've been telling him interviewing is tough. Just you're doing a great job getting interviews, then you get to the final round, you think you're going to get, but he just got this incredible opportunity that came out of nowhere, like a CEO messaged him on LinkedIn. It was a right place, right time type thing. It's ongoing
mhm,
in his life right now, and he was telling us a little bit about a dinner he had just last week. And as he was telling us, I started laughing out loud, and I was laughing out loud because it was so incredible. Like it just how this has happened, and I'm so happy for him. And my wife was laughing, but he looked at us and he didn't know. Like he said, "Are you laughing because
sure,
you
yeah,
think this is great or because you think it's stupid?" I mean, he could see in his eyes like he was going to either be hurt or he was going to be built up. Like, why are you laughing? And
yeah,
so it's just there is no neutral. I mean, and so like it's the woman says to you, "You've got a long way to go." I know that makes me mad when you tell me that story. Like that's just funny. Or, "Hey, great job." And so even for my son, he needs to know. Like, are you laughing at me? Because and we were just, "No, sorry, buddy. Like this is incredible. Like we're so happy for you. I'm laughing because this is amazing." Uh, but so much power that we have to just crush his experience or build his experience.
yeah. Hey, I'm breaking into the podcast conversation here to share with you an exciting announcement. If you've been following the Science of Leadership podcast for a while, you've heard me talk about the book I've been working on. Well, I'm delighted to share that after over 3 years of work, my book, The 4 Stars of Leadership, is finally available. I'm so proud of this book and what it represents. I'm certain that you're going to find it immensely interesting and helpful as a guide on your journey to becoming a better leader. Seriously, you don't want to miss this book. I'm including a link to the book in the description. I hope you'll order your copy today. And please share it with others who might be interested. Also, please be sure to share your thoughts about the book with me. Now, let's get back to this interesting conversation on the science of leadership. You're right. The power we have, and we usually have no idea that we're wielding that power.
Mm-hmm.
We're just sort of operating sort of in a default mode a lot of times with no sense that what we say, what we do, how we're behaving has long-standing repercussions on people, what they think of themselves, what they
Mm.
believe they're capable of doing. Because ultimately, as leaders, I feel like, and those who are seeking to build up people, I'd like to get your thought on this. It's our job to, in a sense, help them see what they're capable of being, because I think there's so many people in the world, and it seems like it's only more so right now, that don't realize what they're capable of being. They're dealing with anxieties or, depression and all this sort of stuff, and looking for anybody to encourage them in a real way. And I think we have that opportunity every single day to do it. And I think the great leaders, it just sort of flows out of them. It's a natural byproduct of who they are or their outlook on life or something that is so vitally important.
I mean, Tom, I work for one of those guys, honestly, and it's funny. As we get there, we call it like an innate builder. It's just who you are, and it's a gift. And there are people that have it, and when we go around and do some of our teaching, we'll ask people in the room, like, who's someone in this room that's an innate builder, and we'll get some amazing stories. Actually, sort of, like, I can remember one in Kentucky where uh, we were in Elizabethtown, Kentucky, kind of near you, and the woman who ended up being the role model in that room, about 75 people, like she's like, me, like I'm a builder, and she was kind of quiet, but just multiple people in the room talked about how everything she did, she was always building people up. It was subconscious, and
Yeah.
and uh, for me personally, that's a place that I'm working to get to. Is this how do I become this subconscious builder? But the guy I work for, Dr. Tom Husted, just all the time telling me, and we've been friends for 30 some years. Like there's actually not a huge power dynamic in our relationship, but he's just constantly telling me, "Hey, this was great," or like, "You do this really well." And I don't know. I'm not going to be above admitting like that feels good, and it makes me feel more capable, and it makes me like
Sure.
want to lean into what I am good at. And he doesn't. He just doesn't. It's just such a
Yeah.
cool thing.
Doug, I was wondering as you were sharing that, what would you say really separates those people who are like this lady who she didn't even know that she was a people builder per se, but what separates those people who are people builders from those who aren't, who are either destructors or just the middle of the road, don't do either one?
I mean, I love the question. It's funny because for me, and the people listening don't know me, but and the way we teach leadership and the way I've gone about it for a couple of decades, I'm not a fan of maxims and like the 7 things that are for sure and like these things you have to do. And so I don't say things that confidently, but I've been studying this for a while now and reading research on it and digging into some books and just seeing people's lived experience. And I'm confident in saying like the things that make someone a builder is the way they think. And this intentional thought, it starts with how we think about other people. And this is where like a personal journey that I'm on, like going from just some negative thoughts, down thoughts, I don't think this person's capable, I don't like this person or whatever, to shifting those thoughts to just positive focus on until I can, until like I know my negative thoughts are like accurate. And so I just need to level with this person. Like I don't believe in you, or I'm not the
Sure.
right leader for you, or you need to find somewhere else. Or I don't think you can get there. It's not creating false thoughts, but it's just I heard a football coach actually a couple of years ago. I went to a talk. The talk was mostly about football, right? It was about our local college coach, and but he said one thing that he tells his players is never let a negative thought complete itself in your mind. And he was kind of talking about like I can't make this block or I can't do this rep. But I took that to like as a leader, cut off the negative thoughts, and it's hard work. But I just think it's that people like that person in Kentucky or like Dr. Tom Husted, they
Yeah.
just think positively about people, and so that's a hard thing to hear, and like it might even be an off-putting thing to hear. But I think the reason I share is because that's not me. I'm not naturally like that. So I'm not saying be like me. I'm saying in my journey to be a more effective leader and a better builder, I am on this almost like atomic habits level journey to get better, better, and better about the way I think about the people I lead, so that then the way I come across is as a builder.
One thing I hear in that is, other than you're not a Maxim sort of, you don't buy into Maxim ideas or whatever, but is honesty. Like there's authenticity that has to be in the building. You don't want to lie to people. Hey, you could be the quarterback, of pick some great, highly successful team or whatever,
Sure.
right? When they don't have the capability to do that, or whatever it may be. You don't want to instill false hope. You have to know somebody well enough to know what they can and can't do in a real sense, and then help them move toward maximizing what they can do without some sense of false hope or things of that nature. And as you were talking, one thing that kept coming to my mind, because you were talking about thinking, right? You got to think about is caring about people, caring about who they really are, understanding who they really are, what they're really capable of. It takes an investment on our part as leaders if we're really wanting to build people. We can build them in those sort of micro moments, right? The lady that told you, "Hey, great job, run up the hill." But if we're really pouring into people that we're leading, I think in the best way, we're investing in knowing who they are, what they're capable of, and that takes a level of investment and some vulnerability, perhaps that the relationship could not pan out as great as you hope or what have you,
Mm.
so that you can help that person get to this place that's so much better.
Yeah, one thing you said there at the end, I think that I think is a really insightful comment for leaders. This notion that the relationship might not pan out as you'd hoped. It really takes it from as we mature as leaders, understanding. I mean, I love the relationship aspect, but I've had to come to grips with the idea that's not about me. Like if ultimately it fails, either because tried to hold this person accountable, or it just didn't go right, or they just don't. I'm not really the person they're looking for to bring them along. It's not about me, right? Like it's about building is about the other person. So first of all, just being okay with that it might not work out. I do nerdy, goofy stuff like reading people's PhD dissertations, and I just stumbled upon one a few years ago. I actually remember I was in a hotel planning for a session the next day, and she's Dr. Lauren McHenry. I think I got her name right. I don't know her. I've never met her. She's not necessarily famous, but she had been a competitive figure skater growing up, and she ended up doing her qualitative research in her PhD on what coaches who got the most out of people kind of had in common, and
Mm,
codified that sort of like you've done with your book, which is amazing, by the way, awesome stuff. But
thanks.
a word she shared in this PhD dissertation, which a lot of people who are familiar with therapy have heard, I guess I've learned this, is unconditional positive regard. That no matter what you do or if you fail or what you share with me, like in a therapy session, I'm going to love you. I'm going to care about you. Like I value you as a person. And that if we think that way, we can have incredibly high standards and hold people to those standards and they might not even reach them, but still I care about you, right? Like, I mean, and
Yeah.
like a mentor of mine, mentor's too soft a word. It understates the impact this guy's had in my life and so many people's life. Named Bruce Brown, who's a former middle school, high school teacher that is just so full of wisdom. There's a golf tournament for him every year that 60-year-old men and women come and play in because they what he did in 1975 in their lives. You know, that's this kind of guy that Bruce Brown is.
Yeah.
But he shared a quote I saw on LinkedIn a couple months ago that said, "The best leaders are relentlessly positive and unapologetically demanding." What an amazing combination, right? Like that relentlessly positive part is like, I'm going to build you. I'm going to build you. I have unconditional positive regard. I care about you. You're awesome. But I'm unapologetically demanding about the standards we're trying to reach and who
Yeah.
I expect you to be. And just that combo, I think it does. Like if you look at so many amazing builders out there, that combination is probably what you'll find.
I think that's right. I think in our society today, everybody wants the unconditional positive regard, but they don't necessarily want to have that standard, right? Holding you
Hmm.
to account to do that. And for me, I don't know if my kids have figured this out yet or not. It doesn't seem that they have yet. My mentees, I don't know if they have. But if you tell me that you want to do something, you want to be somebody, you want to achieve something, that's in stone. If that's what we're going for, if that's our goal, let's go, you know, and do as much as I can to help that person achieve that, become that, whatever it is, holding them accountable. Hey, remember you said that you wanted to do this thing, right? Has that changed? If it's changed, then great. But if you really want to do it, let's don't go into this thing to, just be okay. Let's do it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's another aspect of being a builder. I mean, there's an enormous difference between you suck and you're better than this. Like, right? I mean, that the latter is a building way of telling you like you can do. I mean, you can do better. Like, I know you're capable of more. You said you wanted to do this. I know you can do it. You're not working hard enough right now. It's such a different message than hey, there's a long way to go. It's
Yeah.
just, but it
Right.
proceeds from how we think. I mean, it really does. Like I think maybe going back, like, I missed commenting on it. That word authenticity is so important. I'm not trying to sell any books. I don't make any money from it, but this book, not written by me, you can see all these over here. Words can change your brain is one I like just dug into as I was getting to all this, and it explains, people can intuit how we feel about them,
Yeah.
and so you're awesome. What I don't really think you are is eventually worthless because they know I don't really think it, or you say it to everybody or whatever it might be. But finding
Yeah.
those specific things where you really are great and believing in that and helping you believe that it's just such an incredible thing that leaders can do for others.
Yeah. I agree. I think historically, um, I've been so focused on not giving people platitudes or what I would say is just fluff that I, in the past, haven't been as forthright with encouraging. And that's something I've grown in and changing, have been, especially like just thinking about this idea, right? Like, this is my thing. Let's make it my thing in all domains. And it doesn't cost you. Again, you don't have to lie about it, right? But I remember General Darren McDew, he told me there's always something that you can tell people thank you for. The same thing, there's always something that you can find that somebody's doing that is great, that's worthwhile. The number of times that I heard a four-star when I was doing my study say, I would go down and late at night and there'd be somebody in a cubicle working on whatever report it was, right? That needed to be briefed in the morning. And they would say, hey, you're doing a great job with this. Thank you for your dedication to this. This is really important to what we're trying to achieve here. And just those sorts of moments have tremendous impact.
Yeah, and I think that on the spectrum of things you could do, where just looking at them, almost not acknowledging them, walking by where you don't even think as a leader, I didn't do anything negative there. But there's the person interprets something from that. Oh, not important enough for them. I mean, even subconsciously, right? Like, and it's not. Yeah, it's just the combination's so important because like, and I saw this. I've been kind of almost piloting this as a keynote, this idea of building others,
Mhm.
and there was one time I did it, and I could just feel it. It was a little too fluffy, right? Like it was a little too much about just making people feel good.
Yeah.
And so, thankfully, and iterating and getting feedback and just like reflecting on it myself, we built in this component of expectations. It is so important. Like it's both. It's we got incredibly high standards. But then when you start looking at that aspect of it, if you have incredibly high standards and you're not telling people that they're capable, you're not helping them believe they're capable, you're not letting them know that they achieve, then I mean the research is definitive. Like that creates burnout and it creates
Yeah.
cynicism. And like you can drive people for a while with your high standards. It's transactional and it will be temporal as well. And so that person that general or admiral says something to will probably remember that for the rest of his or her life, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
in that moment, and it will give them a spark. It will make the organization better. It will help achieve a mission. There's so much about it that just little moments of building can do.
General J.D. Thurman. I don't know if you know him, but I mean, just an incredible guy, right? And he talked about being in Iraq and how he would, like, he might go into a mess hall and there would be some, junior person there, and he would peel off his stars and stick it on their uniform and then take a picture and say,
Mhm.
send that to your mom, you know? And he would tell them, hey, look, you're doing a really important thing for everybody else here. Really appreciate what you're doing. Uh, just in those sorts of moments. And like that person is still recounting that story today
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
to
It,
this idea that you were saying, just the longevity of those moments in people's lives.
yeah, anytime I was watching, I think a lot of people watched recently the Netflix documentary on the hunt for Bin Laden, and it focuses on it's a long, it's a long, covers a long period of time, but it sort of zeroes in on when we actually like assaulted his compound and took him down. And in the Obama administration, like Leon Panetta had been the guy who was put in charge of that. And for those who do or don't know the name of Leon Panetta, like if you look him up on Wikipedia, like chief of staff to the president, secretary of defense, and I think at this point he was in his late 60s, maybe even his 70s when this was his kind of like his life's work. And they have him behind a desk at the end of the documentary talking about how the president told him good job, and he'll never forget that. And so it's just like you think. I mean, just the magnitude of that for me was this is an accomplished guy at the end of his life with a monumental mission, but being told good job by someone who's younger than him, and
Right.
and even though he's the president, but still like it was just a really cool human moment for Leon Panetta to say. It felt awesome to hear good job.
A little bit ago, you mentioned a little bit of the research, and as you dove into this, I mean, can you share some of the things that you've identified that why this is so important for us as leaders?
I'll share the story briefly. I've shared in other contexts. I've written about it in the book, but like to kind of give the quickest version I can. When I was first teaching at West Point, I had a colleague in the middle of a discussion. We were talking about our teacher training and how we would be prepared for cadets who asked cynical questions and different things. And
Mm,
he looked at me and said, "I've never met a bad cadet." And I thought he was kind of joking. I was thinking, I met a couple yesterday. Like I don't really like what but I just observed, and his classes were different, right? Like
mm,
they were energetic. The cadets were happy to be there. There was this good relationship, and we were teaching the stuff at the time, the self fulfilling prophecy, the Pygmalion Effect. It
yeah.
has like all kinds of research behind it, and it says we get what we expect. And all basically what my colleague Everett was telling me was like we expect them to be bad, and so they show up that way. But if we expect them to be good, we haven't met a bad cadet, they'll be good. And that it changed my life. Like that it was we were just sitting, in chairs across from each other in his office, and but I for whatever reason I remember that moment, and I investigated. Like I said, I saw his classes, and I just decided to never meet a bad cadet,
Mhm.
and I practiced that for 4.5 years from that point forward, and it worked, if you will. Like the expectations I had about their behavior, even if they came and they were grumpy one day, I just assumed they had a good reason. There's a little bit of intentional naivety in it, but I had this really cool opportunity to go back to West Point about a year ago, yeah, just over a year ago, and teaching the academic 23-24 academic year as a civilian, teaching the same thing I taught 20 years ago in a different context. But now having practiced in my own life, I taught in a medium security prison for about 3 years, and I tried to
Mm,
never meet a bad prisoner, and just as a high school basketball coach, never meet a bad player, and all these places. And it's not always easy, and I slip and different kinds of things, but it shows up in the conversations I'll even have with my wife. Like if I find myself with my wife complaining about this person, well, I know my thoughts aren't there. Like that person's going to know that's how I feel. And so it is hard work. And I think that your average COO who's thinking about operational efficiency and the P&L and whatnot, maybe, and doctors that are thinking about surgery, like, do I have time to worry about what I think about people? I mean, I understand if maybe not, but that's what I've focused on. And I actually highlighted it. So in the science of it, and I didn't read this after doing all this, I didn't read this until maybe a few months ago, that Andrew Newberg and Mark Waldman say this in this book: by holding a positive and optimistic thought in your mind, you stimulate frontal lobe activity. So just digging into the neuroscience of it.
mhm,
And they said functions in the parietal lobe start to change, which changes your perception of yourself and the people you interact with. So it literally like thinking I've never met a bad cadet. If you think about it long enough, or I think positive long enough, it literally changes your brain and it changes your perception. And then it
mhm,
changes the way people perceive you think about them, and it changes them and it builds them. So, to me, there's a lot more to it than that in terms of the work we have to do to get there. But if we had leaders running around all over the place who thought positively about people and had high and thought positively about the standards they're trying to reach, we've now got this incredible combination of I believe in you, but I will accept nothing but like excellence, and I'm going to help you get there. that to me is just this really powerful thing that I think decades into doing this work that I've done on leadership, I've never found anything that I kind of believe in more at this point, because it'll change people's lives.
Hmm.
It'll change who you are as a parent. It'll change who you are as a spouse. Like it's so much about how like show up for others, but then it'll change organizations, and it's only good for the accomplishment of the mission.
And I think, fundamentally changes the people that you're directing it toward,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because most of the time, those folks don't believe they're capable of greatness. They harbor some doubt or whatever. And as people in leadership positions, they incorrectly think that we have it all together, maybe, or that that we're somebody we're not. But then when we step in and say, I see greatness in you, I expect greatness from you, then they have to go back and reassess and say, well, if that person sees greatness in me, believes this about me, maybe I need to rethink my position on myself. And that has so many far-reaching consequences, positive, I think, that can occur as a result. And just like you were saying, the Pygmalion effect is tremendous. What we think of people, whether we express it or not, even they, as you were saying earlier, pick up on that. They identify the inconsistencies in what we say and how we say it, what we look like when we're saying it. Those happen on millisecond levels that we can't even measure, in real time. But neuroscience shows us that we're able to identify these things. Malcolm Gladwell's book Blink kind of goes into this sort of domain a little bit. But so when we're inauthentic, when we're not being truthful, people know that. But then when we are, and they see that, they have to reassess, and that again, that changes, I think, people's perspective on themselves and what they're capable of, and that diffuses across an organization, so that I think it changes everybody's thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if I went back to this gentleman I mentioned earlier, Bruce Brown, the high school, middle school teacher, he signs off almost every email he sends, "You're the best." And I read one of those emails at a kind of a tougher time in my life 3 or 4 years ago, and I know he says it to everybody, like or maybe there's a few people he doesn't say it to, but like it's just what he's saying. I believe Bruce Brown thinks I'm the best because Bruce Brown does think I'm the best, right? It's just how he thinks. Now he thinks other people are the best too. So what's the best? I don't know, but he really believes in you,
Yeah.
and so you feel it, and it doesn't matter that he thinks it about a lot of people. It doesn't have to be about me. It makes me feel more valued, more capable in specific things. And sometimes, in that specific email, he was kind of giving specific advice and it had context. Like it was like, "You're the best." And when I share that story, I joke and say, like, if he signed off with "You're the worst," I might assume he was kidding, but it would still feel a little crappy, right? And so those
Right.
micro moments that you're talking about, they really do matter, and they spread, as you said. It's when I'm a grandparent now. It's crazy to be at that stage of life, and you kind of look back and but our kids, we played cards with our daughter and son and her boyfriend last night, and our kids are here all the time, and like even though we're empty nesters, um, and we've made all kinds of mistakes as parents, and like I have some of them that make me sick to my stomach. When I think back to like I don't know, like leaving my son in this car seat when we went into church, and like having to run back out to the parking lot to get it. I mean, whatever. Like that's a small one, but compared to others, but they're here at our house now, and I honestly attribute it to like we liked them. Like when
Yeah.
we were growing up, we liked them, and I think they could
Hmm.
just intuit that. And
Yeah.
so now the relationship is one of like we get along, not because of anything we really did specifically. It's just we didn't talk about them when we were at dinner about how much they sucked or whatever, or like challenges. I'm not judging anybody here. I'm not. I'm just saying like if I could attribute to one thing, it's probably just the way we thought. Like we liked them, and they could sense
Yeah.
that, and so now we like each other. So it's
Yeah.
that's a long way of saying it. Really just comes down to can we can we shape the way we think? And we can. The good news is we can. We can control, we can shape our thoughts. And
Mhm.
I've been on that journey and I wouldn't have believed it maybe 5 years ago, but we can shape our thoughts and we can create our own neural pathways and shape the way we think. And that will make us better leaders.
Yeah. I've mentioned this on previous episodes. What we experience, how we think, actually physically transforms the structure of our brains.
Mm,
The sulci and gyri, the folds and wrinkles that you see on the outside of the brain, they can be reshaped and reformed over time with this. And so, as depending on we know that people who have traumatic experiences, it reshapes the brain. And so we can over time reshape our brain by investing in these sorts of thought patterns, that we make it part of our operating system, if you will. And that operating system then physically transforms our brain, which then impacts how we function moving forward. So it's pretty amazing. what can happen. Well, Doug, as we're thinking about, you know, this, do you have, I don't know, 3, 5 practical tips maybe on how people can become better people builders?
Yeah, it's interesting until I started that journey into the story about like never meeting a bad cadet and
Yeah.
how I'd gotten back to West Point. And I think one thing I missed saying kind of along those lines, like what can we do? Was I had this cool opportunity to see who I was 20 years ago and come back and be almost in the exact same job, but like a time warp, right? And
Mm.
I was working hard on it when I was in 2006 and whatnot, and think I did better than I was in 2004 to like never meet a bad cadet and see them positively. But I really got to see, if you will, the fruits of it, like in 2023 and 2024, where I had grown, like I had shaped new pathways to where I think all 94 cadets I taught genuinely felt like I had unconditional positive regard for them. And that didn't mean they always got what they wanted, right? Like, I mean, I have
Sure.
specific instances of them coming in to get a better grade and like, no, your grade's not changing. You didn't meet the standard. And I use those words like you're better than this. Like you could have met it, but you didn't.
Hmm.
And not that big a deal. It's one paper, and I think you're awesome. But go do better. But like 20 years is a long horizon, right? They have 20 years to become a better leader. But I think the real tips are it goes to that notion. I mean, like never let a negative thought complete itself in your brain, and never meet a bad fill in the blank. Like that.
Hmm.
It shows up. A gentleman named Scott Snook, awesome lecturer at Harvard Business School, who's another mentor who really helped me think through the science of the Pygmalion Effect and different things like that. He said it's in the attributions we make about people's behavior. We don't
Hmm.
know people's intent. And so when someone says something to us that feels a little bit snarky, or they ask a question, or someone in a meeting, on a Monday morning asks a question, it sets us off a little bit.
Yeah.
Like as a leader, we have to say, I don't actually know why he or she asked that question. Instead of me responding kind of sharply or like a jerk, which is going to diminish them, let me assume they meant well. Maybe I just move on and say, hey, we'll get back to that. But that has truly been the most powerful thing for me, is assuming positive intent in other people's
Hmm.
actions.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think clarifying, like I go out of my way sometimes now to clarify what I intend, because even things like telling a story about parenting, I'm worried I might make other people feel a little bit judged or diminish them, because parenting is a very personal thing. It's tough. I don't want to
Hmm.
act like I've got it all together. I don't want to say anything like this is the way you do it. Like it is tough, and it has its heartbreaking moments. And so even in saying something positive, I want to clarify, hey, I'm not judging anybody here or saying this or putting myself on a pedestal. I'm just trying to share a story. Uh, but I do go out of my way in that regard. So I think like assuming positive intent and then clarifying your own intent, like
Hmm.
continually clarifying, like I care about you. Not all of them cared. Not all of them wanted a relationship, or not everything worked out perfectly. But in certain instances, it worked out beyond like what I ever could have imagined, right? Like in terms of the relationships I was able to build with a few of them, and like how that will carry on. And so, yeah, I'd boil it down to that: like assume positive intent, like truly work on it, and then
Hmm.
clarify that your own intent is positive.
Yeah. Those are good. The first one, assume positive intent. We have on our wall our Collins family values. And
Cool.
among those that we came together and we were like, what are they going to be? And we, identified what we thought they should be. And then I painted them all on this big canvas.
Hmm.
And so it hangs on the wall. And one of them is assume positive intent.
Hmm.
And so that really resonates deeply with me. As I've thought about the people that I try to build, I think it's have have a genuine interest in the person, who they are, care
Hmm.
about them as people. Because once you care about somebody and you know who they are, it's so much easier to invest deeply in them. And I think that's when I think about building people, I'm thinking about how do I invest deeply in these people? Really getting to know them in that way is valuable for me. And see greatness in people. Choose to see greatness is the second thing I would say. And then it's not about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That one is so important. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in why this needs to happen because of me or for me or whatever. And no, it's about this person and their potential for greatness. And if you never get recognized for that or whatever, at the end of the day that they were capable of great things and you help them get there. And to me, that's the biggest reward. So those are some that I think about.
Yeah, I love it. You're feeding me, because I think on those lines, if it's not about us, it's about other people. I think another one I would add is like, if it's not going to build, don't say it. And like, how do we really get to this kind of emotional intelligence level where we're reflecting on what we're about to say before we say it? And I think with our youngest son, I'm doing that a lot. Like he's been living with us for the last year, and he's going through all
Hmm.
this interview stuff. And dude, there's even little things you can say, like, oh, maybe you should have thought about this, but he didn't think about it. It's not going to help him now. If it's going to help him
Yeah.
now, then okay, try to say it or whatever. But he's also, you got to know him. Like I've got to know him, and he's not quite as attuned to like constructive feedback as his sister might be or whatever.
Yeah.
So he doesn't need to hear it. But I think as a basketball coach, like this is a sports example, but kids will miss a layup, right? And you hear
Yeah.
so many coaches like in a huddle, you got to make your layups. Well, every kid knows they need to make their layups, and they're
Right. They're
trying to
not
make their
trying
layups.
to
They don't.
miss it. Yeah.
Yeah, they want to make it. They want to make it for themselves. They don't want to be embarrassed. They want to make it for the team. Like nobody's trying to miss a layup. And telling them like you need to make it just doesn't help, right? Like I mean, now later on, 2 days later, if you can show them like how to like improve the angle they came with the basket or something, then of course. But just simply saying it, like you're saying that for yourself because you're frustrated.
Yeah.
Like you got to
Yeah.
make your lamps, and so however that translates to all sorts of areas of our lives, it's like it's not about us. Like if it's not going to help, don't say it. It's not going to
Yeah.
build, don't say it.
You almost said uh, the second, so we've got, I don't know how many, 20 or something on our list of values. The second one on the list is if it's not motivated by love, don't say it.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so I think that I think that's right. You know, if as you're saying, I mean, is it going to be helpful? Is it true? Is it necessary? If it's not, then probably should just keep it to yourself and work on not thinking that way in the future. You know, restructuring our brains and stuff. So
Probably another conversation, but once people trust you and believe that what
mm,
you say is motivated by love, then you can say almost anything. I mean, not because then they just trust your intent, right? Like it just
right,
becomes this relationship. There is so much stuff out there on leadership that is this is what I think, and I don't discredit that stuff because what you think really matters. I think I might have mentioned it to you. Our favorite book title that we share with the groups we teach is like "It Worked for Me" by Colin Powell, and I don't even have to open the book. Like what an incredible lesson that he titled it. It worked for me. There's humility in that title, and there's like, hey, yeah, I'm 80 and I've done some stuff like Colin Powell, but this is what I'm going to title my book. And but I
yeah,
think to interview 50 some incredible leaders and then sort of like codify that and analyze it and break it down to principles is a scientific process that's now saying, hey, take a look at this. And uh, I think we need more of that because there's too much just this is how you should lead rather than showing, hey, this is how some people have done it and here's some lessons. A little more humility in our leader development, I think would be good.
yeah. Well, I agree with you. Well, Doug, man, it's been a great conversation. You know, I really appreciate it. I felt like it was just flowed so naturally. Really great to have you on the science of leadership. I really appreciate the work you're doing. Hopefully, maybe we can find ways to collaborate in the future. But
Yeah.
thanks for being on the podcast.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Tom. It's an honor, genuinely. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Science of Leadership. We hope today's discussion has inspired you and given you valuable insights to help you become a better leader. Remember, leadership is about helping those we lead do great things. It's a journey of continual growth and learning. When we embrace that journey with curiosity, courage, and humility, we can confront challenges, overcome barriers, and foster environments where everyone can succeed. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow or subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with others who are passionate about leadership. Until next week, keep leading with character, competence, caring, and communication. This is Tom Collins. Let's keep growing.